What's going on, YouTubers? Your boy, Alyx, man. What you're about to watch is part 1 to a series I like to call The Evolutions of Wrestling's Greats, where me and Beer Money 2K member and Horseman member John commentate on a total of 9 wrestlers, giving a great commentary, a great wrestling commentary, illustrating their careers, and I think me and John tore this up. This is by far my best series to date. This is a great series. It'll give you a different perspective on every single wrestler we've talked about. So, part 1 of the video includes Shawn Michaels, HBK, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, I hope you guys enjoy it, and be sure you check out the rest of the parts coming later on this week. Take care. What's going on, YouTubers? Your boy, Alyx, man, with another collab video with Horseman member John. Introduce yourself, bro.
Guys, how are we doing? I am so excited to do this. You know, seeing my good friend Alyx work with Preston on quite a few collab videos, I wanted my hand in the pool. I think Alyx is an amazing shooter, and I just had to take this opportunity. Alyx, I am beyond honored. That isn't even a proper word to describe how I'm feeling working with you again.
I appreciate you, John. It's a pleasure to work with you, too. I mean, this is the same guy that came up with commentaries in his fucking dream. I am pleasured to work with this guy. Trust me, guys. You have no idea. This commentary video, guys, to me, is going to be one of those videos that I think is going to cause chaos. Because this isn't just a regular commentary video. This is one of those commentaries that I think is going to really change people's perceptions on wrestling. We are going to analyze what it takes for a superstar to become a legend by looking at the evolution of wrestlers that really made wrestling what it is. You know what I'm saying, John?
These are wrestlers that, much like their industry, came into their own and evolved into something greater than themselves, and we are coming together to celebrate them today. So sit back, take a deep seat, and relax as two of the Horsemen's finest come together and celebrate truly evolutionary characters in the history of pro wrestling. Alyx, start us off. Who's the first guy you want to talk about?
The first guy on the list is, some of you might not know this, but other than Daniel Bryan, this guy is my top favorite wrestler of all time. And it might not be a surprise to any of you, but that guy is Shawn Michaels, HBK. I mean, we have so much in common. HBK, you know, he's a Christian man. He's a guy that used to be just so bogged down by his demons, and he overcame that. But, of course, we're going to start from the beginning and go up to where he is today. Shawn Michaels, of course, started off in the Midnight Rockers along with Mario Jannetty. And during that time, I believe they were the first high-flying tag team to really revolutionize tag team wrestling, because they was doing stuff that nobody else was doing. You know, in a big man sport where we had these big muscle-bound men, you know, doing suplexes and all that kind of stuff. These guys were jumping off the top rope, doing tag team moves, and they was really making the tag team scene fresh, and it was, like, very exciting for what it was. And then we had, eventually them win the tag team championships, and then the ultimate breakup, which I think John knows a little bit about that, the breakup between him and Mario Jannetty.
Yes, it was the Brutus the Barber Beefcake interview segment. Michaels pretended to iron things out with Jannetty, and the Rockers were going to get back on track and continue trailblazing like only they can. And Michaels ended up putting Jannetty through the plated glass of the Brutus Beefcake interview stage, and that was the heel turn seen around the world. I mean, there was nothing like it, and much like Shawn Michaels himself, it was something that would be a part of wrestling highlight reels for years to come.
And it's one of those things that, you know, separate him from the pack. Because when he was with Mario Jannetty, he was just seen as somebody part of a team. This helped establish Shawn Michaels as an individual, which we would then see him go on to, you know, demonstrate in his ladder matches with Razor Ramon, which was the first ever ladder match, I believe, which was, I forgot what WrestleMania that was. Do you remember what it was, John? Was it 12?
Wasn't that WrestleMania 10?
I think it was 10, I believe. Well,
I do believe it was 10.
Well, you guys might know where it is, but he revolutionized, and he just did so many things to actually revolutionize what wrestling was with the ladder match. He had a couple of good feuds, but he went on from, you know, revolutionizing the business from the ladder match, and then we started to see him team up with Kevin Nash, and then he had that feud between him for that IC championship and stuff like that. But to me, you know, Shawn Michaels didn't really hit that pinnacle point until his feud with Bret Hart for the World Championship in 1996. And I think that was when we started to really see Shawn Michaels, evolve into this prime time player, alongside Bret Hart. And John, take the floor here if you know.
I mean, Alyx, here's the thing. We can talk about all the accolades, which we will, but really just to sum up Shawn Michaels in a blurb, he was the human highlight reel before the term human highlight reel was even coined in the wrestling industry. I mean, you talked about that big break with Bret Hart. The boy with a dream has come true. He had his personal trainer in his corner. They went 60 straight minutes, no falls between them, had to go into overtime. It was an epic atmosphere. The electricity was palpable. Everybody could feel it. And even going back before he came into that big break, Shawn Michaels has always proven he could be a big game player. Again, Kevin Nash, like you said, had the big muscle, had segments like the Heartbreak Hotel, proved that he could be a great talker. And he said in his book, Heartbreak and Triumph, which is an excellent read for any really passionate wrestling fan that wants to pick up a good book at the same time. He went to Vince one day and he said, "Hey, Vince, I know I can be your top guy. I know I can be the best. I want you to give me something. Let's work together and let's make it happen. What do I have to do?" And Vince just shook his head. He smiled and he said, "You just did it." And Bret Hart was the tip of that. He was the absolute epitome of that for Shawn Michaels coming to the forefront, because that was the night that Shawn Michaels truly became the man.
Yeah, man, it really was the night that Shawn Michaels truly became the man. And when he won the World Championship in 1996 WrestleMania, yeah, the boyhood dream really did come true. But I honestly think what really made Shawn Michaels wasn't the win, it was the reign. The reign, we started seeing Shawn Michaels getting frustrated. We started seeing the fact that he's going out there busting his ass, doing whatever he does. But the fact of the matter is, he really wasn't helping to pull WWE out of a situation. He was keeping it afloat, but he wasn't really helping to, at the time, WCW was dominating WWE because of the NWO. And Shawn Michaels was just frustrated. And so what happened was, he started looking at what was going on backstage, and what he tried to do was change that. And we saw that the Madison Square Garden incident, where then Razor Ramon and Diesel and Shawn Michaels and Triple H, who was then known as Hunter Hearst Helmsley, did the whole little shaking hands, heels, baby faces, coming together and shaking hands. That was kind of breaking kayfabe, which has never been done before. And when they left off and go to WCW, Shawn Michaels and Triple H started to pull the curtains down and just started to call things for what it was, which was then known as Degeneration X. And, we started seeing Shawn Michaels just go off the cuffs and start doing things that, was just not part of the WWE code. He was, breaking fourth walls and stuff like that, and it was one of those things where he was actually bringing realism to wrestling, and that's where we started seeing the evolution of the Attitude Era. You got anything you want to say about that?
Alyx, I think one of Shawn Michaels' best traits and one of his worst simultaneously was the desire to top himself rather than to top any current wrestling product. Shawn Michaels is a perfectionist night in and night out, to the point where he says in his book, he became so obsessed with outdoing himself and tearing down the house every single night. He was doing a match with Vader at the time because they were in a program. He was going to go for his patented elbow drop, but he was going to fake Vader out, land on his feet, and then nail a typical elbow drop, but Vader didn't respond to the spot, and Shawn Michaels just snapped at him. And, Shawn didn't like that because Vader was one of the only guys in the back who really treated him nice, because everybody at that point really hated Shawn. They thought he was a politician. They thought he didn't have his stuff together. So, Shawn at the time, it seemed like he cared more about topping himself rather than top anything going on in professional wrestling. But that, at the same time, did just that. That was an inadvertent consequence. Oh, I'm going to be a show stealer, and at the same time, it's going to raise the wrestling product. By him going with Triple H and doing Degeneration X, there were some controversial moments again. I remember he did an interview segment with JR, and JR felt very disrespected because Shawn Michaels was stuffing his pants either with toilet paper or some kind of material, and he was just kind of like horsing around. And JR was trying to conduct a serious interview because I believe Michaels was feuding with The Undertaker at the time, and, he was kind of making a mockery of Taker and JR and the whole scenario. So it would get him in hot water, but nobody can deny that at that time it was very compelling and, dare I say, revolutionary programming to be seen on any television set that was tuned into wrestling on Monday nights.
It was just fresh TV, like ECW was fresh TV back in the day. This was cutting edge stuff. We had both Shawn Michaels and Triple H doing segments where they was coming out in their freaking underwears and shit like that. Everybody was like, holy crap. And the whole little suck it chant of it being derogatory terms and stuff, it was, Degeneration X was just taking off, man. It's sad that he couldn't be there for the pinnacle of Degeneration X, though, because, well, you may argue Shawn Michaels and Triple H's reign was the pinnacle, but most people say that the pinnacle was when Triple H, X-Pac, and Road Dogg and them were there. Shawn Michaels unfortunately had to go out on injury. He got that. Well, it wasn't the infamous "I lost my smile" injury, but the one with Taker. By the way, I just skipped over that. The Hell in a Cell, another revolutionary match. I believe the first ever Hell in a Cell was with Undertaker and HBK in 1997. Am I right, John?
That is absolutely correct. Spot on. And I believe Shawn Michaels even said in his book it was his idea to put a roof on the cage because he told Vince, quote, "It'll look cool." And what turned out to be something that would simply start out looking cool would become one of the most iconic matches in wrestling history. And I think we can thank our revolutionary character, Shawn Michaels, for that fact. Again, that desire to outdo himself and do things never before seen in a wrestling product or done by any wrestler. You know, Shawn, again, was a perfectionist. He only cared about really one thing, showing his peers that no matter what they do, they would never be able to follow what he left behind.
He understood how the business worked. He understood how to really invoke emotion out of you. I think that was one of Shawn Michaels' best qualities as a performer. He knew how to invoke that emotion out of his viewers. Especially the time when he lost his smile, he came back, led into that run with Generation X up to the Hell in a Cell, which eventually led into him getting injured by Taker, which was supposed to be a career-ending injury from his lower back hitting that the casket match. That was pretty brutal. So he had to pretty much drop the championship off to Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 14?
13.
WrestleMania 14, and which was actually built to be a one hell of a match with him, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Mike Tyson as the special guest referee. So, and since then we haven't seen him for the next 4 years.
Fact is, Alex, I mean, Shawn Michaels was a very bitter man, you know, when he left the industry. I remember he said he saw the press conference with Austin, you know, as champion, celebrating the title win, and, you know, really chumming it up with Mike Tyson afterwards. And, you know, to me, Michaels just said everything I've worked for. It was really, he became very egocentric, which is a very, you know, unattractive quality to a lot of boys in the back about Michaels. And he just couldn't handle the fact that on that night, Austin 316, that era had come full circle, and Austin had become the man. And I think that left Michaels very broken, because again, as I've, you know, hammered in this commentary, he is a perfectionist. It's what he cares about, stealing the show, night in, night out, topping his peers. Austin was one of his fellow peers, and he could not top Austin on that night, and I think that ate away at him. And it was a selfish attitude. I gave everything of myself, my health to this business, and this is how you're going to treat me. But what Michaels failed to understand at that time, that's the nature of the beast. You know, you're going to have times where you're going to have to drop the ball and let somebody else carry it, and it was Austin's time. And Michaels, I think, that was too big a pill for him to swallow. Combine that with his health issues and his apparent pain pill addiction at the time, you've got a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, man, exactly. And following WrestleMania, we had Shawn Michaels take that big leap for 4 years, and during those 4 years, I think that was the trying years of his life, the most trying years of his life, because he was at home, he got a wife, and he had a kid. And one time, he said this in the video, he had a video of documenting his life, and he actually said that he was laying on his couch, and he was peeled out of his mind. And, you know, his kid came up and asked him, you know, what was going on, and that's when Shawn Michaels just finally realized, I need to get myself better. I have to improve myself. I have to make myself better for my son. And, you know, he found God during that time, and eventually he came back in 2002 with that amazing match with Triple H. Everybody was saying Shawn Michaels was going to have ring rust. He wasn't going to be able to do anything, you know. He was going to be gone for 4 years. It was probably not going to be the best match of his life. He came back, and it was like he never missed a beat. That match between him and Triple H in 2002 was fucking phenomenal. And to really bring things home, just a few months later, he would win the World Heavyweight Championship. As WWE's way of saying, thank you for coming back, thank you for all the work you've done. And, John, man, what do you got to say about that?
That second run was Shawn Michaels' redemption. And let me say something about Shawn Michaels. To Shawn Michaels, professional wrestling was the bicycle. Once you learned how to ride it, you never forget. That was Shawn Michaels in pro wrestling. And I was very fortunate, being a young boy, really getting intimate with the wrestling product, getting to experience Shawn Michaels. And I remember that world title win, and I had tears in my eyes when Jim Ross said, "Do you believe in miracles? Shawn Michaels is the heavyweight champion of the world." It's those kinds of moments, Alex, where everything just opens up before you, and you see your future with this business as a fan. And I knew I was in it for the long haul with moments like that.
With the evolution of Shawn Michaels from just going from a guy with flashy moves in a tag team that did revolutionize the business to a singles player that helped revolutionize the ladder match, to revolutionizing Generation X and making things real. Everything about Shawn Michaels' career can only be explained by one word: revolutionary. He's a revolutionist. Shawn Michaels' career, he revolutionized a lot of things, even from the days of him just being a young boy in a tag team to his final match with Taker. Everything about Shawn Michaels just screams revolutionary. And it's stuff like that, especially the match with Taker. To this day, I say the match with Taker in WrestleMania 25 was perhaps the best WrestleMania match of all time. Honestly, I think a lot of people will agree with that in some way, shape, or form. Shawn Michaels, is the epitome of what wrestlers should strive for because of his struggles, of what he had to overcome, his personal demons. He struggled through life. He wasn't always the perfect person to be around. He was an asshole backstage. But when he came back for that second run, he turned that all around to the guy that everybody wanted to be around, to the guy that people wanted to face. If you fought Shawn Michaels, you had a match with him, he was immediately over. Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler for a reason, because Shawn Michaels is the definition of what pro wrestling is. You know, John?
Alyx, he's the measuring stick. He inspired my boy, John Morrison. John Morrison said Michaels' influence really made him want to become a pro wrestler. He was very inspired by Michaels. In fact, we see some emulations from John Morrison, from Shawn Michaels, in the way he dresses, in the way he carried himself when he was in WWE. And he said, Shawn being the showstopper, I wanted to be that guy. And I was very touched when Morrison, injured his neck. Michaels actually personally tweeted him, take your time. You're a great talent. Just don't rush it. I've been where you are with these debilitating injuries. Don't rush it. Be 100%, because that's where you're at your best. And to me, Michaels has influenced an entire generation of not only wrestlers, but fans. And his moments, his matches, his breathtaking segments are going to be something I cherish for a lifetime.
And to me, the real icing on the cake for Shawn Michaels' career was his feud with Taker. That last few 2 years with Taker was like the icing of who Shawn Michaels was, what he was all about. It was that obsession to be the guy, to finally do something that nobody else has done, because he spent his whole career of revolutionizing the wrestling business, of doing something that people could not do. And he wanted to be the guy to do something that people couldn't do. And that was end Undertaker's streak. And the fact that he couldn't do it ate him up and, just sent him on a downward spiral those last few months of his career. It made for an epic storyline. And it greatly defined who Shawn Michaels was. And it was really something for the audience to connect with Shawn Michaels. I thought that was beautiful what they did with Shawn Michaels and Taker through those 2 years. What did you think about that, John?
It was nothing short of brilliance. And notice how it wasn't a full-fledged heel turn for Michaels. No, again, he relates to the common man because he's frustrated. We've all had dreams that just we seem so close. Our fingertips even graze them. We can never fully grasp them. That was Shawn Michaels in the streak. He became a man that was the showstopper, the headliner, the main event, the icon. But all of that was meaningless to him. It meant that he could not end the streak. He even said to Triple H flat out, if I can't beat The Undertaker, I have no career. Holy shit. Do you know what that says when a guy like Shawn Michaels says that to somebody? I mean, that just shows you how poignant the disturbing side of Shawn Michaels had become. He was really delving deeper into a dark place in his mind and in his heart. And I feel like he was actually one of the most sophisticated, psychotic characters we've ever had, because he never beat himself over the head. He never yelled or screamed into a microphone. The psychosis stemmed from something far more complex and far more identifiable. Desire. It wasn't a natural state of being. No, it was a state that he went into because he longed for something. And that's why I say, in terms of that, although Foley is by far my favorite psychotic character of all time, Michaels actually comes in second to me because he didn't even have to play the role permanently. He was a temporary in that gimmick, and he gave it so much more sophistication and so much more dimension than guys who have played that role permanently. Because, again, it wasn't a state of mind that they just have. It was a place that he went to, and that's what makes it so different. And you could say the same case for Foley, which is why, again, I call him the greatest. When he was Mick Foley, again, with Orton, he went to that place. He even said so himself. He went back, he watched the tapes of the barbed wire matches in Japan and whatnot, and he saw in his eyes that he liked doing it. But with Shawn Michaels, it just stemmed from a desire. I want this, and I'm willing to go to any lengths above and beyond what I may even be capable of to get the job done.
You know, he was so used to revolutionizing the business. He was so used to doing things that was just out of this world. When it came to a point that he couldn't do it anymore, it hurt him. It broke him down. And I thought how his career ended with Taker ending his career was a great way to end Shawn Michaels' career. You know, the day he finally couldn't revolutionize wrestling anymore, he stopped doing it. That was a perfect way to cap off the career of Shawn Michaels. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. You know, I feel like this Shawn Michaels that we saw could have been the Shawn Michaels that we could have potentially seen after Austin beat him at WrestleMania 14, correcting that botch I made earlier. You know, because, again, it was a guy taking his spot. It was a guy getting to the top of the mountain. So I feel like had Michaels stuck it out, had he not had the injury, had he not had the personal problems, who knows? We may have seen that Shawn Michaels back then, because, again, Shawn Michaels is a perfectionist. He's consumed by his own pride. And I don't want to say ego, because I feel like that's such an ugly term to give to a guy that I love like Shawn Michaels. But, you know, it's the truth. You know, it's a guy who really cared about nothing but stealing the show by being the guy that everybody talked about when they filed out of the arena. And knowing that he felt like he was going to lose that spot to The Undertaker, this entity in himself, an entity within an entity, you know, being WWE, really ate away at him. And I feel like it's such a complex story. It's such a beautiful story. One of the greatest stories told in the past few years. And Shawn Michaels is a great writer and a great author of said story, and it'll live forever.
Definitely a legend in this business. But yeah, guys, that's Shawn Michaels. Let's move on to wrestler number 2. And wrestler number 2 is somebody that I think a lot of the Attitude Era fans are going to love. Stone Cold Steve Austin. We're going to talk about his moments from when Austin came in as Steve Williams. And, you know, he was working in the Indies, and then he went to, I forgot what promotion it was, where he actually got the name Steve Austin. But Austin didn't really start getting noticed until he entered WCW, and he formed that tag team with Brian Pillman, known as the Hollywood Blonde. That was quite the tag team, man. And, you know, Austin was wrecking shop, and it looked like Austin was going to do some good things in WCW. And then, before he knew it, he wakes up one morning, gets a call from Eric Bischoff, and he's fired.
Yes, the infamous phone call. Conflicting stories about that. You know, Austin said he was healing at home, healing from an injury, and Bischoff just fired him, not even face-to-face, felt blatantly disrespected. You know, JR says that Eric Bischoff told Steve, you know, with your black tights and your black boots, we really don't have a way to market that. And, you know, Eric pretty much said, in Controversy Creates Cash, he said, you know what, Steve sounded very unhappy because he heard Steve say, because the wife had picked up, that if that son of a bitch is calling to talk to me, tell that motherfucker I'm not home. And, you know, Eric pretty much said, Austin's not happy, what are we going to do? So I always find that phone call intriguing because there are such conflicting stories about what exactly went down.
This is crazy, man. But you know something? Unlike most talents who would say, fuck wrestling, I'm done with this, Austin took that anger, took that rage, went to ECW, cut that one promo where he told, and just to paraphrase what he said, I'm going to be the superstar that I knew I could be. And there is nobody that can stop me. And he took that rage. He cut some of the most outrageous promos in ECW. He was the guy when it came to promos in ECW. It was just amazing. He had a segment. I forgot the name of the fucking segment. What it was called. Monday Night Quill. There we go. Monday Night Quill. Some of the best, funniest promos I've ever seen. I saw a couple of them. He did one when he was dressed as Eric Bischoff. That was fucking hilarious. But the time then came for Stone Cold Steve Austin to leave ECW. And then he went to WWF, where his career really took off. By the way, you got anything you want to say about ECW, John?
Really, that's when we saw the first glimpses of brilliance from Stone Cold Steve Austin. I feel like, you know, ECW was the perfect place for him because you're talking about cutting-edge, revolutionary, balls-to-the-wall, hardcore television, and it fit the persona where Steve's brilliance really began to shine. You know, he was just cutting-edge, he was shooting at the mouth, and he credits Paul Heyman a lot for, you know, really teaching him how to be a great talker and having a helping hand in cultivating the great promoist we know as Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Definitely. Then he went to WWF, and he came in with probably not the best gimmick in the world, the Ringmaster, with Ted DiBiase as his manager, and he was given the $1 million belt, and hey, you know, even Austin admitted, the gimmick was shit, and it was not the best gimmick in the world to help get yourself over with. But you know something? Austin, instead of complaining and bitching about it, he went to WWE and told them, I want to just be myself. I don't like the gimmick. You know, that's one of the things that I like about Austin. When something wasn't working, he said something about it. He went up to WWE and he told them, I don't like this gimmick. Just let me go out and create my own gimmick. And Austin did that. We saw the evolution of Steve Austin into Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it began in 1996 when he cut that Austin 316 promo on the King of the Ring against Jake the Snake Roberts. That promo was what really launched Austin as a top star. Over the next few years, we saw Austin climb in the ranks when he faced people like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, and eventually get into that world championship. Right, John?
Absolutely. And, to go back to that promo, that was the promo that really had pieces of realism in it, because Jake the Snake was drawing from the Bible to overcome the said alcoholism that he was allegedly battling around the time. So Austin saying, you know what, you can talk about how God saved your life, you can talk about how God saved your career. Tonight, God couldn't save your ass from 316 because I am Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I say I just whooped your ass. And Austin said the very next night, the phrase 316 was already showing up in crowd signs. So it just takes one moment, and that's what any superstar, in today's era should take note of. All it takes is one moment to have a 180 spin for your career. That one moment. And that night, King of the Ring, Jake the Snake Roberts, 316, was Austin's moment.
And he seized it, man. He really did. When we thought he couldn't get any hotter, he had that feud with Vince McMahon that was just fucking magic. And not all the credit goes to Steve Austin, because Vince McMahon was just as good as Steve Austin, and I don't think either one of them could have done without the other. I think that feud helped define an era. That was the driving force of the Attitude Era, the feud between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon, the stuff they was doing on every single Monday Night Raw. It was crazy. Austin was filling Vince McMahon's truck with cement. We had the infamous beer truck incident where he came in and sprayed him with the beer. He attacked him in the hospital. And every single person that Vince McMahon threw at Austin, he would once in a while get beat down, but he would always overcome them. And it created great TV. Two matches that come to mind are his matches with Owen Hart and Bret Hart. Owen Hart, where he got dropped on his head and he still finished the match, even though suffering an injury, showed a lot of determination, showed a lot of heart that fans got behind. And his match with Bret Hart, where he had to pass out. It was a submission match and his face was bloody and everything. And the man passed out, never gave up, and it really helped solidify who Austin was. Austin became the personification of the Attitude Era because of that feud with Vince McMahon.
Absolutely. That feud, to me, was the feud for the common man, because whether you were a casual viewer or a diehard viewer, we could all relate, because it wasn't just that Vince McMahon was a boss. At the core, he was an authority figure. It doesn't have to be an employer. It could be a parent or a teacher. We've all felt those kinds of frustrations that Austin felt with McMahon, and we were able to vicariously live through Austin as a viewer, saying, yeah, you take it to Vince. I wish I could do that to insert person's name here. And, I remember the hospital segment. I thought that was hilarious, especially when he hit him with the bedpan and they just stuck the needle up his ass. It was revolutionary programming. It was compelling programming. And I got to give Vince a lot of credit for being such a willing and active participant in a lot of these segments. He knew how hot Austin was, and he knew how hot he was making the product. And Vince wanted a hand in that. He wanted to help cultivate that, and he did, because they created TV magic together.
And this goes back to his ECW promo. Because, when Austin said it, he said it in the promo, I'm going to be the best that I know I can be, nobody can stop me. He illustrated that with this run. Austin, the funny thing is, he was going out there and just being him. That was actually him, who just blown 100% over. And guys, those are the best characters. The best characters are the people who go out there, be themselves, but just amplify it. And,
exactly.
Austin was wrecking shop. And, even when they tried to turn him heel in 2001, it was one of those things where the fans didn't want to boo Austin because they connected with him. They connected with what Austin wanted. He wanted to be the best that he could be. When he tried to be a heel, he tried to get people to hate him. They couldn't really do it because Austin was the type of character that I think, help me out here, John. I don't think you can really hate with Austin.
Alyx, the problem with that heel turn was Austin never walked the line anyway. He wasn't cookie cutter. He blurred the line. So the idea is when he was a face, you might as well have considered him a heel. Having the heel turn is just labeling, okay, I am a badass by label, not by action or choice or whatever. To me, Austin never towed the line, which is why a turn whether it be heel to face to heel, whatever, would have never worked. Austin said himself that's the biggest regret of his career. He wishes he would have just teamed up with Vince for that brief bit. Then when he had the title, he would have just stunned Vince, had a cold beer, and gone home. To me, that's the two great things about Austin. He was not cookie cutter, and two, he was grounded in realism. Now I know, getting arrested, drowning somebody in beer, tackling people on a regular basis, holding Vince McMahon at gunpoint and making him pee himself, that's not the realism, but the feelings that generated said actions were. And that's what makes Austin such a brilliant, even somewhat complex character, because he has these genuine feelings of frustration, anger, passion, drive, and yet he takes those feelings, he amplifies them, and they create these over-the-top, memorable TV moments. That's what makes Austin so iconic. He didn't have to stray far away from himself. On the contrary, he had to find himself, pull it out, and like you said, crank the volume way up in actions that, yeah, at times seem downright ludicrous, but at the core, the feelings, the motives for those actions were very real and very identifiable, even for the most casual viewer.
And it's unfortunate that a guy that influential to the wrestling business had to come down with a serious injury, and he had to take almost a year off, returned in 2000 to continue his run, had that feud with Triple H, and eventually the match with Rock that led into the heel turn. But it got to the point where Austin was just played out tired, and that led into the infamous Steve Austin walkout in 2002, where he was supposed to have a match with Brock Lesnar, but he said, hell no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to have a match with Brock Lesnar because it's not planned. You're just going to have me lose to him. You're not going to build up to it. And even Austin himself said I wasn't in his right mind, but he was just tired. His body was worn out, and he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't take it anymore. He eventually left. But he returned in 2003, and he took up a less, wrestling role. He had that one match with The Rock, and even then people realized that was going to be his last match at WrestleMania 19. That was his last match. He had the retirement Survivor Series match where his team lost. And since then, Austin has just been an appearing role on TV. But people still remember what Austin represented in the Attitude Era. And I think everything that he did in the Attitude Era really shaped the wrestling business for the better and for generations to come. Right, John?
Absolutely. Hey, we're talking about the guy who created one of the most infamous chants in wrestling history. What?
Oh,
What? It still lives on to this day. That's how you know a wrestler has achieved immortality, where his presence couldn't even be felt, maybe even several states away from where the arena is stationed for that night for a Raw or a SmackDown, and yet he's still there in spirit. He's still there in chants. He's still there in feeling. Austin created an intangible that lives with us till this day, and that's the sign of a truly remarkable wrestler. When, yeah, you can create anything of substance that anybody can visibly see, it's when you leave that intangible mark that you know you've achieved greatness.
And guys, that just pretty much covers the amazing career of Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Definitely one of the best in this business.